Okay, I'm going to try and do this as fast as possible and just take questions later. So, back in the year 2020, when COVID really kicked off and we were heading towards a global quarantine, I heard of this technique, like an ancient Kabbalistic technique that said every verse in the Torah corresponds to a year in time. So I thought to myself, okay, I will go ahead and find 5780, or the verse 5780, and see what it says and see what it's about. And here it is, Deuteronomy 32:25. The sword shall deal death without, as shall the terror within, to youth and maiden alike, the suckling as well as the aged. So we have a force here that will deal a lot of death and a lot of anxiety will affect everybody. No one will be spared. But what I thought was most interesting about this verse, and I made a video about this back in 2020 as well, is if you search it up, it is only quoted one time in the entire Talmud. And listen to what it says here. The sages taught, if there is a plague in the city, gather your feet, as in limit the time you spend out of the house. As it is stated in the verse, and none of you shall go out of the opening of his house until the morning. And it says in another verse, come, my people, enter into your chambers and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourself for a little moment until the anger has passed by. And then it quotes our verse here, 32:25. So this is clearly speaking of quarantining yourself from what they say here is a plague, or in our case, a virus, but nevertheless it's clearly about a quarantine. And I should also point out that this portion of the Torah is called Ha'azinu, and it's a poem written by Moses. So the language is different, and also in a Torah scroll, it's not laid out the same, or it's laid out differently than everything else. It really stands out. So there's something peculiar going on there for sure. And so now we can just go ahead 4 verses to get to 5784, our year currently. I may have reduced them to nothing or wiped them out, made their memory cease among all mankind. But for fear of the taunts of the foe, their enemies who might misjudge and say, our own hand has prevailed, none of this was done by God. For they are a folk or a people void of sense, lacking in all discernment or understanding. If they were wise, they would think about this and gain insight into their future. This is the verse 5784 right here. And it alludes to the next verse. It almost invites you to check out verse 5785. And I will do that. I will take all the sources from both of these verses here. But I think it's very interesting because I found this source on our verse here, and it alludes to the next one as well. And I'm going to read the entire thing. If they, the Israelites, had been wise, they would understand this. And Moses will elaborate on what this is referring to. They would understand that what has happened to them lately has been the natural result of their disloyalty to the covenant they had entered into with Hashem. What should have made them realize all this? And then it goes into the next verse. How could one chase 1,000? So this is for 5785. How could a situation have changed so radically that whereas previously one Israelite would put 1,000 Gentiles to flight, and 2 Israelites could put 10,000 adversaries to run away or to flee, whereas now one Gentile can put 1,000 Israelites to flight, and the situation is reversed. This is talking about next year. Not only must we marvel at this fact, but we must ask ourselves why something like this could have happened. Is it not obvious that this could only have happened because our rock, Hashem, God, has abandoned us? Our author cites as proof that Moses was not exaggerating in Judges 20:10, and it carries on here. It says 10,000 to flight. When the Israelites were loyal to the Torah described in Leviticus 26:8 5 as putting 100 of the enemies to flight. So 5 Israelites were able to make 100 of the enemy flee. When they were disloyal to the Torah, the ratio of their enemies putting them to flee or run away is multiplied. In fact, when the Israelites pursue their enemies, they catch them so fast that no astronomical figures have to even be mentioned. The enemies fall before them like flies, do not even need to be pursued for any great distance. When the Torah speaks of us fleeing, though, it does not mention being killed. Rather, it mentions that we will be so nervous that even when no pursuer is in sight, we will flee. So it seems like I'm not going to make any predictions, obviously. I'm no kind of prophet or anything like that. But if the pattern plays out, it seems like this trouble in Israel isn't going to go away. And I have about 20 other sources on this verse and the other one, and I will go through them all.